Yes, can we continue or do we need to wait for others? Can we continue from where we left earlier? Yes, please start. Shravan, Srinivas, let's start. Okay, we'll start. Right. Now I've added a few slides from what was not there earlier. We'll just try to go through that. Okay. Uh, I think it was in section 36 with respect to Provident Fund. We'll try to go through that. Additional depreciation, unabsorbed depreciation. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Yes. This one I want you to just go through, just read through this. Okay, this is respect to, we did discuss this, but we did not have a slide at that time. Employer's contribution to recognized provident fund. Okay, this employer's contribution to recognized provident fund. Contribution by an employer to recognize provident fund or an approved superannuation fund will be allowed as a reduction subject to the limits laid down for the purpose recognizing the provident fund or approved provident superannuation fund. However, by virtue of section 43B, such contribution is allowed as a reduction subject to its actual payment on or before the due date for filing return of income under section 139(1). Okay. 36(1)(5)(a) is with respect to employees' contribution to provident fund. Okay. Is remitted on or before the relevant due date to the concerned fund account. This is where it matters. Relevant due date is what matters. Okay. The amount so received from the employees is treated as income under section 224 clause 10, and it is allowed only if it is paid within the stipulated due date. This is where the whole thing comes. Okay. Next slide, we see an example for this. There is a difference between these two. Employer's contribution being allowed as a deduction and employees' contribution being allowed as a deduction. Okay. We'll see that example in the next slide. Look at this. I've taken an example where it is for the month of March. Okay. For the month of March, the salary is 1 lakh. Okay. The employer's contribution to recognize provident fund at the rate of 12%, 12,000. Employees' contribution 12,000. The due date for remittance under the Provident Fund Act is the 15th of the subsequent month. Okay. In case 1, the date of remittance is 15/4/2020, 15th of April 2020. The impact for previous year 2019-20 is allowed as deduction. Okay. We are first talking about employer's contribution to Provident Fund. Is it allowed as deduction? Yes. If the date of remittance is 18/4/2020, even then it is allowed as a deduction. Okay, since it is remitted before the due date for file, it is beyond the due date under the PF Act. But as far as employer contribution is concerned, if it is remitted before the due date of filing return, then it is allowed. Due date is 30th of September. Okay, the date of remittance is 18th of January 2021. Okay, not allowed as deduction since it is remitted after the due date for filing return, that is 39/2020. For the previous year 2019-20 to be added back to the net profit. However, it is allowed as a deduction for the previous year 2020-21. Okay, the year of remittance, actual remittance, subject to, as per section 43B, it is allowed as a deduction. Okay. This is as far as employer contribution is concerned. Then we have employee contribution for the same date. Okay. If it is paid by 15th of April, it will be allowed as a deduction. If it is paid by 18th of April, not allowed as a deduction since it is paid beyond the due date under the PF Act. Any doubt in this example that you've got? If you have any doubt, please ask. I'm trying to differentiate between employer's contribution being allowed as a deduction and employee's contribution being allowed as a deduction. Employee's contribution is very stringent, it is very strict. You should have paid by 15th of the subsequent month. If you have not paid, it is disallowed. The reason is even though we are recovering it from the employee's salary only, at the point of recovery, it is to be treated as income under section 2, subsection 24, clause 10. Since it is treated as income, it is being allowed as an expenditure only if it is remitted within the due date under the relevant act. Any doubt? If you have any doubt, you can ask, you can say, or if you have no doubt, say no doubt. Any doubt in this example, understanding this? Please, your response. Your response, please. Any doubt? No doubt. Arunachalam's case, no doubt. Your okay. So, Kartika says your okay. Kartika will continue. Okay, this is one slide that was introduced. Then I think another slide that was yes, this is another example that was introduced with respect to 40A1. I don't know whether I explained this example. As far as section 40A is concerned, 40A1, clause 1 is concerned, it is payment to a non-resident or to a foreign company. Okay. It will be allowed as a deduction only if TDS has been deducted at source and has been remitted in the previous year or before the expiry of the due date of the. So now look at this. X Limited in India is paying royalty to Y Inc. in Spain. Okay. Royalty payable to Y Inc. in Spain for financial year 2019-20 is 1 crore. The royalty payable. The entry has been passed on 31st of March 2020. Okay, on 31st of March 2020, an entry has been passed for 1 crore. Debit royalties, credit the party, or credit outstanding liabilities, whatever be the case. Okay. Credit the party. Why? Okay. The TDS is specified. The rate of TDS is given in section 115A that the rate of TDS is 10%. And normally it says or rate specified in DTA, whichever is lower. DTA means double taxation avoidance agreement. Okay. This is entered into between India and each country. Okay. India and Spain, India and Singapore, India and Dubai. Like this, will have a DTA agreement. And there the rate of TDS, rate of tax, will be mentioned. If the Indian rate of tax is higher, okay, then and the rate of tax mentioned in DTA is lower, we'll adopt whichever is beneficial to the SSE, whichever is lesser. Okay. In this example, 10% is accepted as a lower rate, so 10% is being deducted in lakhs. Net royalty to be remitted is Shravan, I think I've told you what is DTA, double taxation avoidance agreement. Okay. There is one section 90 which you will read in the final. Okay, section 90, 91, etc. You'll read about double taxation avoidance agreement. How is the tax to be calculated? What credit can be taken, etc. 90, 90A, 91, and all that. Okay, all that in final you'll be reading in detail regarding DTA. Here I made a mention stating that because it's either 10% or the rate mentioned in DTA, whichever is lower. Okay, right. Now we look at this example, the solution for this. Now, TDS deducted, only if TDS has been deducted and remitted, it will be allowed as a reduction expenditure. Expenditure amount is royalty of 1 crore. 1 crore is the amount which we are looking at, whether it will be allowed as a reduction or not. In case 1, TDS remitted as per section 200 of the Income Tax Act and Rule 30 of IT rules on 30/4/2020. As per this rule, the time limit for deposit of TDS for the entire month of March is rationalized as 30/4/2020. Normally, it has to be remitted by the 7th of the succeeding month. Okay. Normally, if it is say January 30th, if you have made a payment, okay, royalty payment, then if you have deducted TDS, the TDS has to be remitted by 7th of February. Right through from April to February, it will be 7th of the succeeding month is the due date. Only for March, the due date is extended till 30th of April. If you have made any royalty and if any TDS, for that matter, TDS on any other section, under any other section also, okay, you have got 1 month time for making a payment. So 30th April is the date, okay. So if TDS is remitted on 30th of April, 10 lakhs is remitted, then the impact, okay, for the previous year 2019-20 is royalty allowable as expenditure in the computation of income under the head PGBP for the previous year 2019-20 will be 1 crore. If the TDS is remitted on 30th of September 2020, royalty allowable as expenditure under section 37 in the computation under the head PGBP for the previous year 2019-20, since as per section 40A1, if you have remitted the TDS before the due date of filing return, it will be allowed. The impact is the entire 1 crore will be allowed. Okay, if TDS is remitted on 30th of September. If the TDS is remitted on 31/5/2021, for the previous year 2019-20, royalty will be added back. Okay, it will not be allowable as expenditure. It will be added back to the net profit while computing income under the head PGBP. Why it is added back to the net profit is, as per your accounts, you would have debited royalty. Debit royalty, credit the party. That is the entry that you would have passed. Okay. So that will be added back. However, it will be allowed as a deduction for the previous year 2021-22 because it has been paid during that year, the year of payment. Any doubt in this example regarding disallowance royalty? If you have anything, please ask. Please read through the example. If you have any doubt, please ask. Is it clear? Is it okay? Case 3, explain again, Shravan. Case 3 is the TDS has been remitted on 31st of May 2021. The year in which it is remitted is 2021-22, the previous year in which it is paid. Okay. Since it has been not been paid before the due date, if you look at case 2, it should have been paid, remitted by 30th of September 2020. Since you have not paid by 30th of September 2020, whatever royalty has been debited to the P&L account will be added back to the net profit. Okay. And later on in the year 2021-22, you'll have profit, net profit. You'll have a profit and loss account for 2021-22. You'll have a net profit for that year. In that year, from that net profit of 2021-22, we will allow this 1 crore royalty as a deduction. This is only for income tax purposes. Okay. In the previous year or the financial year 2021, the profit and loss account will not have this royalty amount of 1 crore. It will be the income of that year only, 2021-22. But however, while calculating the taxable income under the head PGBP, you can claim 1 crore as a deduction. Any doubt? Is it clear? Arunachalam. Royalty and employer contribution has to be remitted on or before the filing of return. Correct, Arunachalam, you're right. You're right. Ravan. Then how does it account as a disallowance? Please explain how it is a disallowance. Disallowance means, see, in the year 2019-20, you have debited royalty to the P&L account. Because of debiting royalty to the P&L account, your net profit has come down to the extent of 1 crore. It has come down. In the previous year 2019-20, you have debited royalty to the P&L account. Your net profit has come down. Okay. As per Income Tax Act, we are saying this royalty will not be allowed as an expenditure. Will not be allowed as an expenditure because the tax deducted at source, TDS, has been paid beyond the due date for filing return of income. The due date for filing return of income is 30th of September. The tax deducted at source has been remitted, delayed payment. Therefore, for the year 2019-20, you are going to add back to net profit. If you're going to add back to net profit means it is, why are you adding back? Because it is disallowed. Allowed means you would not have made any adjustment. You look at case 1, it is allowed as an expenditure. You're not going to make any adjustment to the previous year 2019-20. Look at case 2. In case 2 also for the previous year 2019-20, it is allowed as an expenditure. Whereas in case 3, for the previous year 2019-20, it is disallowed. However, for previous year 2021-22, it is allowed. 2 different years. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah, clear. Okay. We'll move on to the next slide. This is one disallowance which I wanted to say. This is with respect to payments made to persons outside India. Where payment is made to a person outside India, the TDS, the disallowance provision is section 40, clause A, subclause 1. Okay. Sometimes we say 40AI also. It is 40 clause A, subclause 1. Okay. Now I'm going to 40 clause A, subclause 1A. This I think I explained on the other day. Just read through this slide. Here we say if the TDS is not remitted before the due date for filing return, the entire 100% of expenditure we don't say is disallowed. We say only 30% of such sum will be disallowed. Okay, in the previous case, the entire 100% of the expenditure was disallowed. Here, only 30% of the expenditure is disallowed, where the amount is paid to a resident and tax has been deducted at source but has not been paid, or tax has not been deducted. In such cases, 30% disallowance will happen. This is the difference between the previous one and this is. In the previous case, 100% disallowance. In this case, 30% disallowance. Where tax is deducted in any subsequent year, it will be allowed as a deduction in that year in which it is deducted or in which it is paid. However, here we have a small a lenient view that is being taken. What we are saying here is where the SAC fails to deduct tax at source as referred above. Murali Krishna, sir, disallowance paid by resident or NR? Non-resident. Disallowance is not paid. The tax deducted at source, whoever is the payer is the Indian. The expenditure is for the resident, okay, Indian resident, okay. The payment is made by a resident to a non-resident. X Limited is an Indian company which is paying to Y Inc., a foreign company, royalty is being paid. In that case, whose responsibility is it to deduct tax? The residents, the payer's responsibility to deduct tax at source. So it is the payer who is going to claim it as expenditure. Therefore, it is the payer who has to remit the tax TDS within the due date. Okay. It's not non-resident. Non-resident receives the money. He is outside India. So the tax deducted at source has to be paid by the resident. And whether it is an allowance or a disallowance, it is for the resident. Agree? Okay. Now here it is payment is made to a resident. One resident is making payment to another resident. I'll give you an example in the next slide. Here, in this example 40 clause A subclause 1A, the payment is being made by a resident to another resident. You understand? It's being paid by one resident to another resident. Tax has to be deducted at source. There are a number of sections, TDS sections. Tax has to be deducted. If tax has not been deducted or after deducting, if tax has not been paid within the due date for filing return, then 30% will be disallowed. However, here what this says, where the SSC fails to deduct tax at source, he is not deemed to be an SSC in default if the following conditions are satisfied. The payee or the recipient, the resident or non-resident, has furnished his return of income under section 139, and the payee or the recipient has taken into account such sum for computing his total income, and the payee or recipient has paid tax due on the income declared by him in such return, and the payer furnishes a certificate to the of a chartered accountant to the income tax department that the payee has done all these things correctly. You understand? If this is done, then disallowance will not be there in the hands of the payer, the person. You will understand this better when we go to the next example. Look at this example. Okay, now here it says audit fees. Okay, you are the auditor. Your client is going to pay you audit fees. On 31st March 2020, he makes a provision entry. He makes an entry in the books of accounts. Debit audit fees, credit audit fees payable, liability, 1 lakh he creates. Okay, actually speaking, on this audit fees, the TDS that has to be deducted under section 194J is at the rate of 10%. Okay, so what audit fee should be paid to the auditor is only 90,000 should be paid. 10,000 should be deposited into the government account. Agreed? Now, look at the example. In the first example, TDS is remitted on 30th of April. As I've told you earlier, only for the month of March, the due date for remittance of TDS is 30th of April. You've got 1 month time to remit it. And if he has paid it by 30th of April, it is allowed as a deduction. No issues, no disallowance. If the TDS is remitted on 30th of September 2020, which is the due date for filing return, even in that case, the entire amount of 1 lakh will be allowed as a deduction. However, if the TDS is remitted on 31/5/2021, okay, then only 70% of the fees shall be allowed as deduction under 37. Therefore, add back 30% of audit fees to net profit as per section 40A IA. 30,000 has to be added back for the previous year, 2019-20. However, 30% of audit fees shall be allowed, earlier disallowed in 2019, shall now be allowed as a deduction from the income computed for the previous year, 2021-22. Note, if the payee recipient client has furnished return of income, who is the recipient? The auditor is the recipient. If he has shown 1 lakh as his income, okay, for the client 1 lakh is expenditure, whether it is allowed or disallowed is the question. Now, in case the auditor has shown it in his return of income as an income, he should have shown it as his income, okay, and he has filed his return within the due date under 139(1), okay, and if he has paid the tax according to his, he'll have income from a lot of people, okay, his PGBP income, if he has paid the tax, and if the payer, the client, is able to furnish a certificate to the income tax department, okay, that from a chartered accountant that the payee has fulfilled the above mentioned conditions, then no disallowance of, and the entire audit fees of 1 lakh shall be allowed as deduction previous year 2009. Any doubt? Is it clear? Any doubt you can ask. Anybody who's got any doubt? Any doubt in 40A1A? Murli Krishna. Murli Krishna has always got a problem with case 3. Case 3 is similar to the previous one here. The previous case 40A1. Okay, 40 clause A sub clause 1 also. The TDS was remitted in a different financial year, not in the current financial year. Okay, the TDS for the current financial year relating to an expenditure for the current financial year was paid in a different financial year. Here, the audit fees relates to the previous year 2019-20. Okay. The TDS should have been remitted by 30th of September 2020, the due date for filing return. Okay, 30th September. The client did not pay the TDS by 30th of September 2020. Therefore, 30% of the expenditure is disallowed. However, the year of payment of TDS is 31st May 2021. In that year, it will be allowed as a deduction. It can be claimed while computing PGBP for the previous year 2021-22. It can be claimed as a deduction because 31st May 2021 falls in the previous year 2021-22 can be claimed. The note says if the payee recipient, meaning the auditor, if the auditor has shown it as his income, audit fees, he should show it as his income. Okay, if he has shown it as his income, if he has paid tax on that, and if he has filed the return within the due date for filing return, and if a certificate, auditor certificate can be furnished, not this auditor, another auditor certificate can be furnished, that all these things have been done properly by this auditor, the recipient, then in the hands of the payer, the client, the entire audit fees will be allowed as a deduction. Okay. Is that okay? Please. I think I'm repeating it again and again. Any doubt you can ask. Still, if you have doubt, can we move on, please? Saravana Kumar. Clear, sir. Very good. Very good, Saravana Kumar. I feel happy you have understood. Okay. The objective is whatever is communicated, you should understand it in the same manner in which I want you to understand. Okay. Then the message is conveyed. Arunachalam is clear. So we'll move on. Okay. Murali Krishna again. Sir, in the hands of the client alone, benefit of deduction. Obviously, yeah, who is going to debit it in the P&L account? Whose P&L account audit fees is allowed as expenditure? Is the client. The client is the person who is going to pay you audit fees. He is the one who is going to debit his P&L account. So the benefit of deduction is for the client. Who is the client? Client is the payer, the person who's making the payment. Okay. Okay. Have we discussed this 48 to 2A and all that income tax, wealth tax paid? I don't think we discussed. Okay. In this disallowance, you have if income tax has been debited to the P&L account, it will be disallowed. Now, of course, Wealth Tax Act is not there, but if it is for an earlier year, you are looking at it when Wealth Tax Act was prevalent. If income tax paid has been debited to your profit and loss account, or wealth tax paid has been debited to your profit and loss account, it will be added back. It is not allowed as an expenditure. It is basically an appropriation of the profit. It is not, if you're debiting it to the P&L account, you're not incurring this amount for the purpose of earning income. Therefore, the logic is it will not be allowed as a deduction. 40 clause A, subclause 2B, any payment to a state government. Okay, undertaking owned by the state government, directly or indirectly, by way of royalty, licensing fee, etc., by whatever name. Then salary. Any salary payable to a person outside India or to a non-resident shall be disallowed. To a non-resident shall be disallowed if tax has not been deducted or paid. Okay. Any payment to a provident fund or other fund to other benefit of employee shall be disallowed unless employer has made effective arrangement to secure tax shall be supposed to pay fund. 40A5. This is important one. This you try to understand. 40 clause A, subclause 5. Any tax on non-monetary benefits purposes borne by the employer on behalf of the employee on which tax is exempted in the hands of the employee shall be disallowed in the hands of the employer. See, if I'm giving a rent-free accommodation, rent-free accommodation is a benefit, non-monetary benefit, or it is a perquisite. Okay. Now, if it is taxable perquisite, okay, with taxable meaning tax, you have to value the rent-free accommodation and then include it in salaries, and you have to pay tax. Who has to pay tax? The employee has to pay tax. However, in case the employer is very generous, he says, don't worry, I will pay the tax on the rent-free accommodation, value of rent-free accommodation, I will pay the tax. On behalf of the employee, if the employer is going to pay the income tax on the value of a non-monetary benefit, then it will be disallowed in the hands of the employer. Understood? So in this first point, 40 clause A, subclause 2 and 2A, that is important. And the last one, 40 clause A, subclause 5. These two are important in this. And of course, 40A clause 3 also, alternate ones. That is when a salary is being paid to a non-resident. Okay, then you have to deduct tax and only make the remittance. Then make the remittance. Any doubt? Any doubt? And we move on. Effective arrangement means you have set aside some money. Okay. Effective arrangement means money is available or you have made arrangement to borrow money and then pay the tax, etc. Each person is worried about his income revenue. No, the government is also bothered about its revenue collection. They want some assurance that this money will be paid. Okay. Okay. Now look at this one. This is an important section. We are looking at section 40B, partnership firms. Please see this slide, I'll then explain. This is with respect to partners, remuneration, and interest. Okay, 2 points are covered in this 40 clause B. In 40 clause B, 2 points are covered. First point is regarding salary, bonus, commission, or remuneration. The second point will be with respect to interest paid to a partner. Okay. You would have seen in section 28, chargeability, the first section, chargeability, we would have seen Sharan. Sir, if it is non-monetary works has been exempted. Correct. It is exempted in the hands of the employee. Okay, it is exempted in the hands of the employee if tax, what is being spoken about in 1010 CC is the tax paid by the employer is exempted because the tax paid by the employer on non-monetary benefits, the tax itself is whatever be the tax amount paid. For example, rent-free accommodation is say 1 lakh. Okay, and we'll assume 30,000 is the tax that has to be paid. The tax amount is 30,000. Rent-free accommodation is a taxable pursuit. On that, the tax to be paid by the employee is 30,000. Now, in case the employer pays that 30,000 to the government, that 30,000 tax amount will once again become a perquisite because that 30,000 tax is an obligation of the employee met by the employer. Therefore, it will once again come under the definition of perquisite. Which one? The tax amount of 30,000. That tax amount of 30,000 is what is disallowed in the hands of the employer. If the employer has paid that 30,000 and if he has debited his profit and loss account with 30,000, his net profit is going to come down to that extent. That 30,000 tax paid by the employer is will be disallowed. That is meaning, Sharan. Is that okay, Sharan? Here we are discussing about that 30,000 tax amount. Agreed? Okay. Now here we are talking about 40B disallowance for partnership firms. When we read section 28 chargeability, we said the remuneration received by the partner, the interest received by the partner will be chargeable under the head PGBP. This is what we read in section 28. And when we read section 17, salaries, we said the remuneration received by a partner is not taxable under the head salaries, it is chargeable under the head PGBP. And in section 28, we saw that remuneration paid to partner, interest received by partner will be taxable under the head PGBP. Now, in 40B, we are telling how much will be allowed as a deduction, how much will be disallowed. This is what we are talking about here in 40B. There is a limit. Any amount of salary paid to the partner, working partner, especially here it is working partner. It is not to any partner. Okay. So by a firm, so if you are going to pay salary to a sleeping partner, it is fully taxable. It is fully disallowed. It is fully taxable. Agreed? Now, only if salary, bonus, commission, or remuneration by firm to a working partner shall be allowed if it is within the prescribed limits. On the first 3 lakhs of book profit, or in the case of a book loss, amount allowed will be rupees 1,50,000 maximum, or 90,000, 90%, whichever is higher. Either 1,50,000 or 90% of book profit, whichever is higher. On the balance of book profits, amount allowed will be 60% of the balance of book profits. Okay. What is the meaning of book profit? Okay, there's a definition for book profit. It means the net profit as shown in the P&L account. Okay, for the relevant previous year, computed in the manner laid down in chapter 4D. What is the manner laid down in chapter 4D? This is where we are reading, no? This computation of income, all the deductions from section 30 to 37, depreciation, okay, scientific research expenditure, all that, disallowance under 40A clause 1, 40A clause 1A, 40A clause 2, 2A, 3, 4, 5, right? So in that manner, if it is computed, that is book profit, okay? We'll see an example in the next slide, numerical example, just to explain this. And working partner means an individual who is actively engaged in conducting the affairs of the business or profession of the firm of which he is a partner. And one important point left out here is it should be mentioned in the partnership deed that he is a working partner. And it should also be mentioned in the partnership deed that this is the amount of salary that is going to be paid to the working partner. That also should be mentioned in the partnership deed. Okay. Any doubt in this slide? If you have, you can ask. Numerical example follows. How to calculate. Can we move on? Yes. Can we move on? Arunachala. Yes. We'll move on. Look at this example. I've given an example. Basic. I just tried to make you understand. We look at this example, then I'll read through this. Here, I think yes, this slide I think we missed out. This slide we missed out because interest paid to partners by a firm should be restricted to 12% per annum. Simple interest. This is what we are. And this is where we say that the payment should be authorized by the partnership deal, and it should relate to a period falling after the date of partnership deal. In the case of remuneration, it should be paid to a working partner. This is an important slide. I think we missed out on this. Then only next slide comes. Read through this slide. Have you read through it? Can we move on? We have said interest paid to a partner is interest paid to a partner, interest on capital or interest on loan. For both, it will be 12% only. Okay. It is both for interest on capital as well as for interest on loan. Can we move on, please? This is the example we were at this point. Look at this example. In this case, please look at it. Whatever is allowed as a deduction under 40B, in this example, Sharon is asking, this example, the remuneration allowable in the hands of the working partner is 1,08,000. This 1,08,000, whatever is an expenditure for the partnership firm, will be an income for the partner. So the expenditure allowable to the partnership firm is only 1,08,000, and therefore 1,08,000 shall be the income tax in the hands of the working partner. Okay. Have you understood this example clear? Anybody, any doubt? Sharon says clear. Anybody's got any doubt? You can look at the example, try to understand. If you don't understand, I've just given a numerical example and how to calculate. The total amount of book profit is 5,08,000. Okay, on 5,08,000, first on 3 lakhs, 90%, 2,70,000. On the balance, 2,08,000, 2,08,000, 60%, 124,800. Okay, so 394,000 is what is the amount calculated, but actual amount paid is only 1,08,000. So whichever is less, 1,08,000 is allowed. Anybody, any doubt in this? Anybody who does not understand can ask. This is a very, very simple example. There's every possibility that they can ask for a partnership firm computation of PGBP, okay, income under the PGBP of a partnership firm. At that time, you'll have to calculate what is the salary allowable, what is the salary not allowable. Interest allowable, interest not allowable. Suppose 14% interest has been paid to the partner, only 12% will be allowed, the balance 2% will be disallowed, which means 2% will be added back. Okay. Murli Krishna. Sir, 1,20,000, how it comes, sir? 1,20,000. Less interest on capital paid to partners, 12%. Now you look at the question. The question talks about 12% interest shall be payable. Okay. And it says the fixed capital amounting to 10 lakhs totally. Interest on capital is 12%. The partnership deed provides for payment of interest on fixed capital at the rate of 22%. It is allowing, but the partnership deed permits 22% interest on capital. However, the Income Tax Act says the maximum amount of interest payable shall be restricted to 12%. So 12% of 10 lakhs is 1,20,000. And here I have underlined the said net profits were after charging salary payable to all partners amounting to 1,08,000, but before crediting interest to partners' accounts on their fixed capital amounting to 10 lakhs. Okay, fixed capital amount is 10 lakhs. Okay, now the interest says 22% as per the partnership deed. But here in this question, before debiting interest, they have given you a profit. Okay, therefore, we are eligible to claim deduction to the extent of 12% only. So 12% of 10 lakhs is 1,20,000. Any doubt? Is it clear? Murli Krishna. Others, if you have any doubt, you can ask. In other words, we are trying to arrive at the net profit after all expenses allowable under the Income Tax Act and before payment of salary to partner. That is where we are arriving at. Understood? How 3 lakhs book profit, Francis, Ajay. How 3 lakhs book profit? See, Ajay, the book profit is 5,08,000 that you have seen no, in the first tabular column. You find that the book profit is 5,08,000. This you see, no? This is being split into two halves. The first portion is 3 lakhs and the balance portion is 2,08,000. On the first portion of 3 lakhs, 90% is allowed. On the balance portion of 2,08,000, 3 lakhs plus 2,08,000 is 5,08,000. Okay, 5,08,000 is the book profit. On the balance portion of 2,08,000, 60% is allowed. So we are bifurcating this 5,08,000 into two parts. Okay, Francis. Why do you split, sir? Ajay. Because you have seen, you should have asked me this in the previous slide. The previous slide, you look at this tabular column. It says on the first 3 lakhs of book profit, so much is allowed. Okay. And on the balance of book profit, so much is allowed. You understand? That is why I'm splitting this. So when the income book profit is 5,08,000, on the first 3 lakhs, 90% is allowed. 2,70,000. On the balance of 2,08,000, 60% is allowed. Okay. Right. Somebody had asked, Murli Krishna had some more question. No, what was the question? 1,24,800 also, sir. And that 1,24,800 only is 60% of 2,08,000, the balancing figure 2,08,000 balance of book profit on that 60% is 124,800. Okay, Saravana Kumar. If the total book profit is 3 lakhs, then in that case only 90% will be allowed. You're correct. Correct. You're right. Absolutely. Saravana Kumar is right. Okay. We'll assume your profit is not 3 lakhs. Your book profit is only 2,50,000. Then on that 2,50,000 only 90 profit, 90%. Okay. You're not crossing that slab. Okay, Saravana Kumar. Right. Okay. Can we move on? So this is an important part. They can ask a full question in partnership form. So therefore, please understand this point. Others, a lot of people are silent, no doubts at all. I think Francis has asked question for the first time. Okay, since our class has started. Sharon, clear. Okay. Sharon is one person who has the maximum number of questions. Correct? Okay. 40BA. Earlier one was 40B, which was with respect to a partnership firm, LLP, etc. This is 40BA, Association of Persons, BOI. In these cases, what will happen? First line itself says, shall not be allowed as deduction. Any interest, salary, bonus, etc. shall not be allowed as deduction. Okay. In case where the member who receives interest from AOP also pays interest to AOP BOI during the same year, only the net excess interest paid by AOP or BOI to such member shall be disallowed. Okay. Where a person is a member in his representative capacity in the AOP or BOI, and if he receives interest in his individual capacity, it's not FRO, it should be FOR, for the AOP or BOI, such interest shall not be disallowed. See, this representative capacity. Suppose a HUF is a member of an AOP, okay, and the Karta of the HUF will be in his representative capacity, he'll be representing the HUF in the AOP. And suppose he receives interest in his individual capacity as an individual, if he receives such interest shall not be disallowed. Okay. This 40BA is not very important. Still, you've understood the basic thing, it's okay, we'll move on. Body of individual means a doubt for from long time. Body of individuals. A individual, B individual, C individual. Okay. These three people join together, and before Deepavali, November 14th is Deepavali, November 12th, they put up a cracker shop. Each person puts in 50,000, 1,50,000 they have put in. They buy crackers, they sell crackers, they make the profit, they distribute the profit amongst themselves and quit. It is a temporary partnership. Body of individuals have joined together for a particular purpose. The purpose is putting up a cracker shop for 2-3 days till November 14th. November 15th, they'll close the shop. They'll distribute the profit, they'll distribute the stock, whatever is there, and then quit. So, three persons, three individuals join together to do a business, body of individuals. Okay. AOP, Association of Persons. Now, a HUF is the owner of about half an acre of land. HUF is owner of half an acre of land. Adjacent to that, adjacent to that, um, the another half an acre of land is owned by a company. Another half an acre next to that is owned by an partnership firm. Another half acre is owned by an individual. So four half acres nearby, adjacent to each other. Okay, one half acre is owned by a HUF, one by a half acre by a company, one by a partnership firm, one by a individual. All four of them join together and promote a complex building. Okay, they promote a building and they sell the building. They make a profit. They share and they quit. That is AOP, Association of Persons. In persons, HUF is there, company is there, individual is there, partnership firm is there. All of them join together and do a business. That is the difference between a body of individuals and an AOP. So, Murli Krishna, now you understand the difference between body of individuals and a partnership firm. Yes. 10(2)A does not apply to 40B. Or 40, section 10(2) is with respect to the profit, share of profits. Okay. 10(2)A is with respect to share of profits from the received from the partnership firm. Since the partnership firm itself is a taxable entity, it is going to pay tax. After paying tax, whatever is the profit after tax is being distributed to the partners. It will not be taxed once again in the hands of the partner. Therefore, in the hands of the partner, it will be profit received from the firm will be exempted. Is that okay, Sharan? That was regarding 10(2)A. Murli Krishna. Tax liability considered as individual collaborates or BOIs, sir. For body of individuals also, it is the individual slab rate only. Correct only. It's individual slab rate only will be applicable to body of individuals also. Actually, for an AOP taxation will be slightly different. That you'll read in final. There is one section 86 and all that. You read separately. Okay. Any doubt in we come to another set of disallowances 40 capital A subsection 1 subsection 2 3 7 9. We'll go into this 40 capital A subsection 1 expenses not deductible. Okay. Now nothing much in the first subsection. It only says the expenses given below will not be deductible. That's all. Nothing, no significance to the first subsection. Second subsection, there is a meaning attached to it. We look into 40A2. Read through this, I'll explain. I'll give you an example. Just listen to this example, then try to understand. Okay, right. Now, Suppose I, I have a chartered accountant firm. I have a chartered accountant firm. I have 10 desktops on top. Okay, desktop computers I've got. Example. Now, what happens is I have to enter into an annual maintenance contract, AMC. There are two types of AMCs for computers. One is a labor AMC, that is, I will pay, they'll say labor AMC is rupees 1,500 per computer per year. Per year, per computer is 1,500. So 10 computers means 15,000 rupees. I will enter into an annual maintenance contract. I'll pay to a computer firm 15,000 rupees. Whenever there is a breakdown, okay, they will send their engineer to rectify it. If any spare part or component has to be replaced, I have to pay separately. It is only labor contract. Okay, labor contract. Okay, 1,500 rupees per. This is generally the market rate. Okay, 1,500 rupees is the market rate. If it is along with material, it is called as a comprehensive AMC. They'll say it is something more, 5,000 rupees per computer. They will say is the comprehensive AMC, wherein the computer company firm will undertake to replace the component also at their cost. So we'll assume we'll take labor AMC only for the time being example. So 10 desktops are there. For 10 desktops, I enter into an AMC at the rate of 1,500 rupees. 15,000 rupees is the market rate. Okay, 1,500 rupees per desktop. Now, what happens is I enter into with another firm wherein I am going to pay 3,000 rupees per computer. 3,000 into 10, 30,000 rupees is the amount that I pay as AMC. Generally, in the market, the rate is only 1,500, but I am entering to an AMC for 3,000 per computer into 10, 30,000. So, in my P&L account, I am going to debit 30,000. Agreed? 30,000 is the amount that I'm going to debit. Now, this case comes up for scrutiny assessment. Income tax officer takes up my case for scrutiny assessment. In my profit and loss account, he sees AMC charges paid 30,000. He is asking me show the bill. So I show proof of the bill expenditure. Next question he asks is normally in the market it's only 1,500, but you're paying 3,000. Who is the owner of this computer firm? It so happens that it is my wife. My wife is the owner of this computer firm. So income tax officer says you are paying more, you are reducing your expenditure, you are reducing your net profit by quoting more expenses. Okay, 30,000. You are trying to inflate your expenditure, reduce the profit, pay reduced tax. Simply because you are the owner, the proprietor of the computer firm is your wife, you are paying more. I will disallow. Normal market rate is only 1,500, but you're paying 3,000, double the amount you're paying. Therefore, the difference I will disallow. It is unreasonable. He'll say it is excessive, unreasonable, because the payment is being made to a specified person. Who is the specified person? With respect to an individual, any relative. Definition of relative is another question. Okay. We have seen earlier, long back, income from other sources and all. What is the relative? Ascendant, descendant. Okay, spouse, children. So here it is paid to my wife. Therefore, he will say the excessive amount will be disallowed. Agree? Now, I am a chartered accountant. I'll not keep quiet. I'll try to argue the case. How do I argue the case? I say, sir, what you're saying is absolutely right. The market, they are paying They are charging only 1,500, but I am paying 3,000. You know why? Because see, if you pay 1,500 and if you lodge a breakdown complaint, that engineer will come after 24 hours. He will take 24 hours time to attend the call. He'll attend the call. Only tomorrow he'll come and attend the call. Whereas I am a chartered accountant, I'm having a firm where most of my clients are foreign, non-resident clients in foreign countries. So whenever they call, for them it is night, for me it is day. US, for them it is night, in India it is day. So whenever they call, I have to attend. If I don't attend to that call, then I lose my business, my profession. Therefore, I lose my clientele. Therefore, I need somebody who is there always at my office during the office time immediately to attend to my calls. So I'm paying this firm. No doubt this firm is owned by my wife, but I'm paying 3,000 per computer because one of their engineers is always stationed at my office. See, I have record, I have proof, I have got attendance register to show. I have the agreement also states that the engineer shall be at your office from morning 10 to 5. He shall be there. Always he shall be there to attend to the call immediately. The moment there is a breakdown, he'll immediately attend to the call. Therefore, I'm paying extra money. So if I'm able to explain, if I'm able to reason it out, then income tax officer will say, okay, allowed. Do you understand? So he says he may disallow. You look at the word, he may disallow such expense as he considers to be excessive or unreasonable. So I am trying to convince him that my expenditure is reasonable. He will allow, even if it is paid to the proprietorship concern owned by my wife. Even then, it is reasonable. If I'm able to explain, he will allow. Is this understood? 40A subsection 2. Any doubt? Anybody has got any doubt? You can ask. Arunachalam says clear. Others also hopefully you are clear. Okay. 40A3. This is also an important section. 40A2 is also important. 40A3 is 40A3. Here also we are trying to disallow cash payments. This has been undergoing a lot of changes. Earlier it was 20,000 cash payment, now it is 10,000. Okay. If any expenditure is going to be made per day, okay, the expenditure should not be more than 10,000. Sharon is asking for the previous slide. Okay. I'll take some time to go to the previous slide. Sharon, okay. Read this slide 48. Now, any revenue expenditure, we have already seen capital expenditure also, if you pay by cash, it is disallowed. Depreciation not allowed. 43. subsection 1, which spoke about actual cost. There it said that in case you are paying cash for buying plant and machinery, any fixed asset, if it is going to cross 10,000 rupees, it will not be allowed. You cannot claim depreciation on such asset. That was capital expenditure. Here it is revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure, if it is paid by cash exceeding 10,000 rupees per day per person, it will not be allowed. For example, you're getting hold of a painter. The painter, you want to paint the building. You're talking about all business expenses, okay? Right. It's not personal, not for your house. This is for your business. Painter. He comes and surveys the building. He says, sir, total amount is 60,000 rupees will be the expenditure. Paint, labor charges, everything put together. Give me 30,000, I'll have to buy material. If you pay cash, okay, is allowed. 30,000 per in one day if you're going to pay. If you're going to pay 10,000 rupees today, 10,000 rupees tomorrow, and 10,000 rupees the day after, then no problem. Allowed. But if you're going to pay 30,000 rupees in one day to one person, then it is disallowed. And in the case of, whereas if you're hiring a transport, tempo travel, tempo, or a lorry, in such cases, you can pay up to 35,000 rupees cash. Okay. There are exceptions to this rule. Uh, you can read the exceptions which are given there. Payment made for purchase of agricultural produce, forest produce, animal husbandry, horticulture, fish products. You're going to the fish market. You're a hotel, you're running a hotel. You're going to the fish market, you have to buy fish. Okay. Now the total amount of fish comes to the purchase comes to 25,000 rupees. You immediately take out your checkbook, you write a check, cross account, pay check, and give it to the fish vendor. That fellow will say, sir, get lost. By the time, because the problem is by the time he puts the check, he deposits the check in his bank account, and then it undergoes a clearing, and then it gets credited to his bank account. It will take 1 day, 2 days, it will take. By the time this fish would have got rotten or it would have got eaten, okay, that will not be there. So the fish vendor will say, sir, you want to give cash, then take. So in such cases, allowed. Okay, it's an exception. You can pay cash about 10,000. You're going to a village. You're going to buy agricultural produce, wheat, rice, okay, or paddy. You're going to buy. If you go and give account pay check, nowadays, of course, the farmers, everybody has got Jandan account. Everybody has opened a bank account. Earlier days, there was no bank account and all that. So therefore, they said cash can be paid even exceeding 10,000 rupees. Still, it's a purchase expenditure. Purchase expenditure will be allowed. Okay. And there are so many items, exceptions. Okay. You're a village which is not served by a banking facility. All these examples are there. You can just go through this. Suppose you're going to buy something on a Republic Day, which is a holiday, okay, public holiday, or you're going to buy something on Independence Day or on Gandhi Jayanti, you want to buy something, some expenditure has to be made, and you want to give a check, not possible. You can pay cash, still allowed as an expenditure. So this is section 40, capital A, subsection 3. Any doubt? And the exceptions. Exceptions are given in Rule 6DD. Rule means income tax rules. One separate book is there. Just like Income Tax Act, there is an income tax rules. In that income tax rule, book, what it says is how to administer the Income Tax Act, how to implement the Income Tax Act is given in Income Tax rules. So in that income tax rules, this Rule 6DD talks about exceptions to Section 48(3). Okay. Any doubt in 48? Anybody who's got any issues? Want me to explain anything? Saravana Kumar. For me, another doubt. Share of profit in firm is exempt for only partner alone or partnership also? I don't understand your question exactly because a partnership firm can also be a partner in another partnership. Then this partnership firm has the character of a partner. So when the other partnership firm is declaring profit after is sharing the profit or distributing the profit after tax, then in the hands of the partnership firm also to be exempted. What is the character of the partner? Individual can be a partner. Partnership firm also can be a partner. 9 points, sir. Lee Krishna. Payment made to employee by way of salary after it TDS under section 192, where the employee is temporarily posted for 19 days, sorry, for 15 days on a or on a ship, and the employee does not maintain account in any bank at such place or on a ship. I'm deducting TDS, okay, and I'm paying salary. That fellow is only for temporarily for 15 days he's been taken on employment. Okay. I can pay cash exceeding 10,000. Exceeding 10,000 cash can be paid, still it will be allowed as an expenditure. There is no disallowance. That is what they're saying is the nature of payment is salary. The TDS has been deducted under section 192. The period of employment is 15 days, and the salary paid is in cash exceeds 10,000 allowed as a deduction. There is no disallowance. It is an exception. That is what it is. How many rules are included in the syllabus, sir? Karan? Syllabus, see, whatever we are teaching you here, only relating to that particular section, if there is any rule, we are bringing it to your notice. Otherwise, we are not bringing it to your notice. Murli Krishna, more than 15 days means cash payment in excess of 10,000 rupees if it is paid, if it is allowed. It will be disallowed. Okay. Understood? Any doubts so far? Last 1.5 hours we have been on this topic. We have continued business income. Any doubt that you've got, you can ask. No doubt. Yes, tell me. If you have any doubt so that we can clarify. Or else we will take now for tea, coffee. Okay. Come back after 10. Okay, everybody. Payments made in cash in this case are disallowed, sir. Uh, yes, if you, in this case means what? Anywhere if cash payment is made in excess of 10,000 rupees, it is disallowed. These exceptions are cases where even if you pay in cash, there is no disallowance. It will be allowed. If I go to a village and if I purchase agricultural produce, handicrafts, if I'm going to pay 55,000 rupees cash, still that is allowed as a deduction. There is no disallowance. No disallowance means no adding back. So these are all exceptions. Rule 6DD is listing down the exceptions to cash payment. Understood. Suppose my profit and loss account, there is a repairs and maintenance. Okay. And the payment is made by way of cash. Total amount of repair is 70,000 rupees. 70,000 rupees cash I have paid. The entire 70,000 will be disallowed, will be added back to the net profit. Your accounting, there is no question of whether you paid cash or not. If it is an expenditure, if it is genuine, if it is a revenue expenditure, it can be debited to your P&L account. Okay. But here we are saying we are discouraging cash payment. Now clear? Clear. Okay. So we'll take a break, right? Time is 7:30. We'll take a break. After 10 minutes, we'll get back, right? If you have any doubts after the break, we'll clarify.